The howling wind cut through the pines like a razor, sweeping snow across the moonlit clearing. Mark Grayson pulled his weathered coat tighter as he trudged through knee-deep drifts, his breath forming clouds in the frigid mountain air. Behind him, Atlas, a massive gray and white shepherd with unusually intelligent eyes, suddenly stopped, ears perked forward, nose testing the wind. "What is it, boy?" Mark asked, his voice rough from disuse. The dog growled low, not in threat but in alert. 3 years of companionship had taught Mark to trust the animal's instincts without question. Atlas was no ordinary dog. The military had enhanced him with heightened senses and intelligence during the same experimental program that had recruited Mark as an engineer. Now both were relics of a conflict most wanted to forget. Atlas bounded forward, disappearing into the darkness between the trees. Mark quickened his pace, following the deep paw prints in the snow. The abandoned mining town of Silver Creek lay silent behind them, its empty buildings standing like tombstones against the night sky. Mark had chosen this place precisely because people avoided it, haunted, they said, by the ghosts of a failed civilization and broken dreams. The perfect place for a man haunted by his own ghosts. Atlas barked once, sharp, insistent, from somewhere ahead. Mark unholstered his sidearm, the only modern weapon he still carried. The forest grew denser here, the moonlight filtering through branches and silver shafts. The temperature had dropped further, well below freezing now. When Mark found Atlas, the dog was standing sentinel over a hollow beneath a massive pine. At first, Mark saw nothing but shadows until a small movement caught his eye. He knelt, brushing away snow and pine needles. Two small forms huddled together, children barely conscious. Mark's heart hammered against his ribs as he reached out, touching a small arm. The skin beneath his fingertips was ice cold and blue. Not the blue of hypothermia, but a soft, alien blue that seemed to shimmer faintly in the darkness. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. They were dressed in thin, silvery garments that offered little protection against the bitter cold. No shoes. One child, slightly larger than the other, stirred at his touch. Eyelids fluttered open to reveal irises the color of polished silver, pupils expanding in the darkness. "Help, please," the child whispered in perfect, unaccented English. Mark didn't hesitate. He shed his coat, wrapping it around both children. As he lifted them, surprisingly light despite being the size of human 6-year-olds, the larger one spoke again, voice faint but clear. "We were bad, so Mom left us here." Mark cradled them against his chest. "No one's leaving you anywhere now," he said, his decision already made. Atlas circled them, sniffing cautiously at the children, then looked up at Mark with an expression that seemed almost human in its concern. "Come on, boy. We need to get them warm." The wind had picked up by the time Mark reached his cabin, a sturdy structure built against the side of the mountain, half hidden by pines. He shouldered the door open, Atlas slipping in ahead of him. The wood stove in the corner glowed with embers, and the dog immediately went to it, pawing at the nearby stack of wood and as if understanding the urgency. Mark laid the children on his bed, piling every blanket he owned over them. Their blue skin had a translucent quality in the lamplight, veins visible beneath the surface. Not red like human blood, but a deep indigo. Their features were almost human, yet subtly different. Cheekbones too high, noses slightly flatter, ears with a gentle point at the top. "Not human," Mark muttered to himself as he stoked the fire, "but definitely children." The rumors had circulated for weeks. A crash in the mountains north of Silver Creek, military vehicles converging on the site, unusual lights in the sky. Mark had dismissed it as the typical conspiracy theories that followed any unexplained event. Now the evidence lay in his bed, two small aliens shivering despite the growing warmth. The smaller child remained unconscious, but the older one, perhaps a girl, though Mark wasn't certain alien biology followed human gender dimorphism, watched him with those unnerving silver eyes. "Can you understand me?" Mark asked, approaching slowly to avoid frightening her. She nodded, then looked at the other child with obvious concern. "That's your—" Mark paused, unsure of the relationship. "Sister," the child supplied, "twin." "What's your name?" The child hesitated, then made a sound that started as a musical note, and ended with what might have been words, but beyond human vocal capability. "You can call me Lyra," she said after a moment. "This is Elin." Mark nodded. "I'm Mark. The dog is Atlas." At the mention of his name, Atlas padded over, resting his large head on the edge of the bed. Lyra reached out cautiously to touch his fur, then pulled back. "He won't hurt you," Mark assured her. "He's the one who found you." Lyra's hand returned to Atlas, fingers tangling in his thick coat. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog. Mark filled a pot with snow to melt for water, then rummaged through his limited medical supplies. He had no idea what might help an alien child, but warmth and hydration seemed universal necessities. "Lyra," he said carefully, "what happened? Why were you out there alone?" Her silver eyes clouded. "We were escaping. The ship fell. Mother told us to run and hide." Her voice broke slightly. "The bad humans came. The woman who pretends." "What woman?" Mark asked. But Lyra had turned her attention to her sister, who had begun to stir. Elin's eyes, when they opened, were the same startling silver, but wider, more innocent. She saw Mark and shrank back against her sister with a small cry. "It's okay," Lyra soothed in their native language, a series of musical tones that made Atlas tilt his head in curiosity. "He saved us from the cold." Mark offered water, which both children drank eagerly. Their movements were graceful despite their exhaustion, and Mark noticed small, almost invisible patterns on their blue skin, subtle whorls and lines that might have been natural markings or some form of cultural decoration. "You need to rest," he told them, pulling the blankets higher. "We'll talk more when you're stronger." Lyra nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "The woman who pretends. She will look for us. She wants all the children." Mark's jaw tightened. He didn't know what that meant, but the fear in Lyra's voice was universal. "No one's going to find you here," he promised. "Get some sleep." As the children drifted into exhausted slumber, Mark checked his perimeter security system, motion sensors and cameras that would alert him to any approach. Then he cleaned and loaded his hunting rifle, setting it by the door. Atlas watched him with knowing eyes. "I know, boy," Mark said quietly. "Looks like our quiet life just got complicated." The dog huffed in what sounded remarkably like agreement, then settled on the floor between the bed and the door, a guardian position. Mark poured himself a measure of whiskey and stood by the window, watching snowflakes dance in the moonlight. For the first time in 3 years, something had broken through the numb routine of his self-imposed exile. He should contact authorities, report finding survivors from the crash. But which authorities? The same ones who had cordoned off the crash site, the ones Lyra feared? No, whatever was happening, those children were now under his protection. Mark drained his glass, the whiskey burning a path to his stomach. Tomorrow would bring decisions. Tonight, he would stand watch. Outside, unnoticed in the swirling snow, a shadow moved against the tree line, a figure too tall and thin to be human, observing the cabin with patient, alien eyes. Dawn brought heavy clouds and more snow. Mark, who had dozed in his chair by the fire, woke to find Atlas standing at attention, staring at the bed where the alien children slept. Lyra was sitting up, her silver eyes fixed on the dog with intense concentration. Atlas's tail wagged slowly, his head tilted as if listening to something. "Are you talking to him?" Mark asked, startling both dog and child. Lyra blinked. "Not words, feelings. He understands." Mark rubbed his stubbled jaw. The military scientists had enhanced Atlas's intelligence and sensory perception, but nothing in their reports had suggested telepathic abilities. Then again, they hadn't been testing against alien minds. Elin stirred beside her sister, murmuring something in their musical language. Her color seemed better this morning, the blue of her skin richer and more vibrant. "Are you hungry?" Mark asked. Both children nodded eagerly. Mark prepared a simple breakfast of oatmeal with dried berries and honey. He watched carefully as the children examined the food, sniffing it before taking tentative tastes. Soon they were eating with obvious enjoyment, the simple meal disappearing quickly. "More?" he offered, and they nodded again. While they ate their second bowls, Mark checked his security feeds. The screens showed nothing but snow-covered forest, but something prickled at the back of his neck. Soldier's instinct, the feeling of being watched. "Lyra," he said, returning to the table, You said you were escaping. From what? The girl exchanged a glance with her sister. The ship was taking us somewhere safe, but it was damaged. We crashed in the mountains. She gestured vaguely northward. Mother was hurt. The woman who pretends found us. She took Mother away. This woman, is she human? Like me? Lyra nodded. She said her name is Celesta Morn. She showed papers to the other humans who came. Said she was she struggled for the word, guardian. But she lies. She wants the children for the dark rooms. Mark frowned. Dark rooms? Where they study us? Elin spoke up, her voice softer than her sister's. The ship's memory showed us. They have been taking our people for many cycles. Mark felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. Government black projects, extraterrestrial research. It sounded like conspiracy theory nonsense. Except two pieces of living evidence sat at his table, eating oatmeal with surprising dexterity, considering they had 6 fingers on each hand. How many of your people were on the ship? He asked. 23, Lyra answered. Most adults, 6 children. Her voice trembled. We don't know who survived. Mark's mind raced. If what they said was true, this Celesta person was collecting alien children for some clandestine research facility. The implications turned his stomach. He'd seen enough of humanity's scientific curiosity during the war to know how quickly it could become cruelty. You're safe here, he told them firmly. I need to go check something outside. Atlas will stay with you. The dog moved to sit between the children at Mark's command. Elin immediately threaded her 6-fingered hand into his fur. Outside, Mark circled his cabin, searching for signs of intrusion. The fresh snow had covered any tracks from the night before, but as he neared the tree line to the west, he found something that made his blood run cold. Impressions in the snow, not footprints exactly, but strange narrow markings, as if something with long, thin appendages had moved across the surface without fully breaking through. The pattern led toward his cabin, circled it, then returned to the forest. Someone, or something, had been watching them. Mark followed the trail to the edge of the trees where it suddenly vanished. Looking up, he saw nothing but snow-laden branches. Whatever had made those marks could move through trees or fly. A distant mechanical sound drifted down from the clouds. Helicopter rotors. Mark ducked back into the cover of the pines, scanning the gray sky. Military patrols had increased since the crash, but they rarely came this close to his property. The sound faded without the helicopter becoming visible. Still, it was a reminder that isolation wouldn't protect them forever. Back inside, Mark found the children examining his bookshelf with intense curiosity. Atlas remained at their side, vigilant but relaxed. Can you read our language? Lyra asked, holding up a dog-eared copy of Hemingway. Yes, those are stories. Will you read to us? Elin asked, her silver eyes wide with interest. The request was so normal, so childlike, that Mark felt something inside him soften. A protective instinct he thought had died along with his family in the bombings that had ended his military career. Later, he promised. First, we need to talk about keeping you safe. He hesitated, then asked, do your people have ways to contact each other? Any technology that survived the crash? Lyra shook her head. Our communicators were in the ship, but she exchanged another look with her sister. Our people will be searching. Mother is important. They will not abandon her children. Important how? Lyra touched the subtle markings on her forearm. She is keeper of records. The ship carried our history, our knowledge. The humans who hunt us want this knowledge. Mark nodded slowly. This wasn't just about alien children lost in the woods. It was about intelligence gathering, technology acquisition. The stakes were infinitely higher than he had first realized. I need to contact someone I trust, he said, to find out what's happening at the crash site. He still had one ally in Silver Creek, Sheriff Dalton Mace, a fellow veteran who had respected Mark's desire for solitude but checked in occasionally. If anyone could gather information without raising suspicions, it would be Dalton. The satellite phone connected after 3 rings. Mace here. Dalton, it's Mark Grayson. A pause. Mark, been a while. Everything okay up your way? Just checking in. Heard there was some excitement north of town. Military presence? Another pause, longer this time. Yeah, some kind of government research plane went down. Hazardous materials situation, they're saying. Areas under quarantine. Casualties? They're not saying much. Why the interest, Mark? Thought you were done with the outside world. Mark watched the alien children now sitting on the floor with Atlas, communicating with him in that strange, silent way. Just curious, saw helicopters. We'll steer clear of the North Ridge. Whole area's locked down tight. Listen, Mark. Dalton's voice dropped. There are rumors, strange lights, unusual tracks in the snow. Folks are spooked. People love a mystery, Mark said noncommittally. Maybe, but I've seen some of these tracks myself. Not animal, not human either. Just be careful up there, all right? Always am, thanks, Dalton. Mark ended the call, troubled. If Dalton had seen tracks like the ones outside his cabin, others would too. It was only a matter of time before someone followed them here. We can't stay, he told the children. It's not safe. Where will we go? Elin asked, fear edging her voice. I have a hunting cabin, deeper in the mountains, more isolated than this. We'll leave at nightfall. Mark spent the day gathering supplies, food, medical kit, ammunition, winter clothing that might fit the children. He found 2 pairs of his smallest wool socks, which the children pulled over their narrow 6-toed feet with expressions of wonder. Warm, Elin said, wiggling her toes inside the thick wool. As the afternoon wore on, Elin's condition worsened unexpectedly. Her skin paled to a lighter blue, and she developed a raspy cough that shook her small frame. What's happening? Mark asked Lyra, who hovered anxiously over her sister. The cold damaged her breathing sacs, Lyra explained. Our bodies are not made for your winter. Mark cursed under his breath. What can I do? What medicine do your people use? Lyra shook her head helplessly. The healers use special herbs. We don't have them here. Mark rummaged through his medical supplies, finding nothing that seemed appropriate for alien physiology. We need to keep her warm, very warm. He built up the fire until the cabin was sweltering, then wrapped Elin in thermal blankets. The child's breathing remained labored, her silver eyes dulled with pain. Tell me more about your people, Mark said to Lyra, hoping to distract her from her sister's condition. Where do you come from? A world called Nixa, Lyra replied, never taking her eyes off Elin. It is warmer than Earth, more oxygen in the air. She gestured vaguely upward. Far away, many jumps through the void. Is that why you're blue? The oxygen difference? Lyra nodded. Our blood carries more than yours. We need it to survive. She touched her sister's face gently. Elin's system is younger, still developing. The cold hurts her more. Mark checked his watch. Still hours until nightfall. If Elin's condition deteriorated further, they wouldn't be able to travel at all. Could oxygen help? He asked suddenly. I have a small tank for emergencies. Lyra's eyes widened. Yes, our healers use breath helpers when we travel to other worlds. Mark retrieved the oxygen tank and mask from his emergency supplies. He adjusted the flow carefully, then helped Lyra position the mask over Elin's face. The child resisted at first, then relaxed as the enriched air filled her lungs. Better? Mark asked after several minutes. Elin nodded weakly. Her color seemed to improve slightly, the blue deepening toward its normal shade. She needs to rest now, Lyra said. The air will help her recover. Atlas, who had been watching the proceedings with obvious concern, moved closer to Elin, pressing his warm body against her side. The child instinctively curled toward the dog's heat. While Elin slept, Mark continued preparations for their departure. He modified a small sled to carry the oxygen tank and other supplies they would need. If they moved quickly enough, they could reach the hunting cabin before dawn. Lyra observed his work silently for a while, then asked, Why are you helping us? Most humans would have called the authorities. Mark continued packing, avoiding her silver gaze. I've seen what authorities do with things they don't understand. Usually involves dissection and experiments. But that puts you in danger. Wouldn't be the first time. Mark secured a coil of rope to the sled. Besides, Atlas likes you. He's a good judge of character. At the sound of his name, the dog looked up, tail wagging slightly. He's special, Lyra said. Not like normal Earth dogs. No, Mark agreed. Military enhancement program. Supposed to create the perfect reconnaissance partner. They messed with his genetics, his brain chemistry, made him smarter, stronger, more perceptive. Then they shut the program down when the war ended. Why? Ethics concerns, public backlash, the usual reasons humans give when they are done playing God. Mark checked the oxygen gauge. They wanted to put him down. I couldn't let that happen. So you rescued him, Lyra said softly, like you're rescuing us. Mark didn't respond. He wasn't rescuing anyone, just postponing the inevitable. Sooner or later, the government would track them down. He was just one man against an entire system designed to capture and contain anything deemed a potential threat. A sudden alert from his security system interrupted his thoughts. Someone had triggered the perimeter sensors. Mark moved quickly to the monitors, checking each camera feed. What is it? Lyra asked, sensing his tension. Not sure yet. Mark cycled through the feeds. Nothing on the eastern approach. Nothing to the south. Nothing. There. Movement on the northern perimeter. A figure trudging through the snow. Hunched against the wind. Human-sized, wrapped in a heavy coat. Moving directly toward the cabin with determined steps. We have company, Mark said grimly, reaching for his rifle. Lyra rushed to Elend's side, protective. The woman who pretends? Can't tell. Mark zoomed in as much as the camera allowed. The figure wore a hood pulled low, concealing their face. Something about the gate seemed familiar, though. I'm going out to intercept, he decided. Stay in that immediate. Keep the door locked. If anything happens to me, take Atlas and run. Head south, downhill. Find Sheriff Mace in Silver Creek. Lyra nodded, her young face suddenly looking much older. Be careful. Mark checked his sidearm, then slipped outside, circling through the trees to approach the intruder from the side. The snow had stopped falling, but the wind had picked up, whipping loose powder into miniature cyclones. Perfect cover for his approach. He closed within 20 yards of the figure before taking position behind a large pine. The stranger continued forward, seemingly unaware of his presence. From this angle, Mark could see it was a woman, her face still hidden by the hood. That's far enough, he called, raising his rifle. Identify yourself. The figure stopped, hands slowly rising in a gesture of surrender. Mark, it's me. Rachel. Mark's breath caught. Rachel Miller, the doctor who had treated him after the bombing, who had later become more than just his physician, the woman he had left behind when he retreated to the mountains. Rachel, he said, disbelief evident in his voice. What the hell are you doing here? She pushed back her hood, revealing the face he had once known so well. Older now, more lined, but still unmistakably her. Can I lower my arms? It's freezing out here. Mark lowered his rifle but didn't put it away. How did you find me? Dalton told me where to look. After you called him, he contacted me. She took a step forward. He was worried about you, Mark. Said you sounded involved in something dangerous. So he sent you after 3 years of silence? He thought you might listen to me. Her expression hardened slightly. And I wanted to see for myself that you were still alive. Mark hesitated. Rachel had no connection to government agencies that he knew of. She had been a civilian doctor at a military hospital, nothing more. But 3 years was a long time. People changed, loyalties shifted. What do you want, Rachel? To help? She gestured toward the cabin. Dalton said you might have found something from the crash site. Mark's grip tightened on his rifle. What do you know about that? Only rumors, but I've seen what they're building at the Northridge facility, heard things from colleagues who were contracted to work there. Her voice dropped. They're holding survivors, Mark, running tests. It's not right. How do I know you're not working with them? Rachel met his gaze steadily. Because I remember what the war did to you, what you told me about the military's special projects. I wouldn't be part of something like that. Mark studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, he made a decision. Come with me, but understand, if you're lying, if you're leading them to us, I won't hesitate. She nodded solemnly. I understand. He led her back to the cabin, alert for any sign of pursuit or surveillance. At the door, Atlas greeted them with a low growl. positioning himself between the newcomer and the children. "It's okay, boy," Mark said. "For now." Lyra stood protectively beside Elend's bed, her silver eyes wary as they assessed Rachel. The doctor, to her credit, showed only momentary surprise at the sight of the blue-skinned children before her medical training took over. "The smaller one is ill," she observed. "Respiratory distress?" Mark nodded. "Cold exposure. Their physiology isn't adapted to our winter." "May I?" Rachel gestured toward Elend. Lyra looked to Mark for guidance. He nodded once and she stepped aside, though her posture remained tense. Rachel approached carefully, her movements slow and non-threatening. She examined Elend without touching her, observing the child's breathing, the color of her skin, the oxygen mask. "The supplemental oxygen was smart," she told Mark. "But she needs more than that. Their hemoglobin equivalent must be significantly different from ours." She turned to Lyra. "Does your species use any particular medications for respiratory conditions?" Lyra seemed surprised by the direct, respectful question. "Yes, extracts from the Gela plant. It helps expand the breathing sacs." "I don't have that," Rachel said, "but I might have something similar. Human medications that dilate bronchial passages." She opened her pack, revealing a well-stocked medical kit. "I brought supplies, just in case." As Rachel treated Elend, Mark watched her work, memories surfacing of another time when her skilled hands had saved a life. His own. He had trusted her then, completely. Now caution tempered that trust. "Why would Dalton contact you?" he asked while she administered a nebulizer treatment to Elend. "After all this time?" Rachel's hands remained steady. "Because he's scared, Mark. The people running the facility have been pressuring him, threatening his family. He needed someone he could trust who might be able to help you." She met his gaze briefly. "There aren't many people who fit that description." "And you came, just like that? Risked everything?" "Not just like that. I've been working with a group, doctors, scientists, civil rights advocates. We've been monitoring the situation since the crash, trying to gather evidence of what's happening at that facility." She adjusted the oxygen flow. "When Dalton called, I was already looking for a way to make contact with any survivors who might have escaped." "A resistance group," Mark said flatly. "If that's what you want to call it. We prefer Ethical Oversight Committee." She finished the treatment and stepped back. "She should breathe easier now. The medication will help for about 6 hours." Lyra immediately moved to her sister's side, checking her condition. Elend's breathing did seem less labored, her color improving further. "Thank you," Lyra said to Rachel, the words clearly costing her pride. Rachel nodded acknowledgement, then turned back to Mark. "You're planning to move them, aren't you? Tonight." "How did you know?" She gestured to the packed supplies, the modified sled. "It's obvious, and it's the right call. They'll be coming for you, if not tonight, then soon." "They?" "Department of Special Research and Containment, a black ops division that officially doesn't exist. Celesta Morn is their field director." Rachel's expression darkened. "She's ruthless, Mark. Brilliant, but utterly without ethical boundaries." "She has the children's mother," Lyra interjected, "and others from our ship." Rachel nodded grimly. "The facility is holding at least 7 survivors that we know of. 3 adults, 4 children. They're conducting invasive tests, tissue sampling, looking for technological advantages, biological secrets." Mark's jaw clenched. "How do you know all this?" "We have someone on the inside, a scientist who couldn't stomach what was happening." Rachel checked her watch. "We're planning to get them out, Mark. All of them. But we needed to find any survivors who escaped first." "Wait, Mama, because their people are coming." Rachel's eyes held his. "Our intelligence suggests they've been monitoring the situation from orbit, preparing a rescue mission of their own. If they arrive while their people are still captive, they might see it as an act of war," Mark finished. "Exactly." Rachel glanced at the alien children. "We're trying to prevent an interspecies conflict before it starts." Mark absorbed this information, recalibrating his plans. If Rachel was telling the truth, and his instincts said she was, this changed everything. A simple escape to a more remote location wouldn't solve the larger problem. "What's your group planning?" he asked. "Coordinated extraction. We have people inside who can disable security systems, provide access, but we need more firepower, more tactical expertise. She looked at him meaningfully. We need you, Mark. Before he could respond, Atlas suddenly raised his head, ears forward, body tense. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Everyone froze. Mark moved to the window, peering carefully through the blinds. The security monitor showed nothing, but Atlas's enhanced senses were rarely wrong. Something's out there, he said quietly. Rachel joined him at the window. Could be my people. I told them to stay back, maintain distance. Or it could be Morn's team. Mark checked his weapons. Either way, we need to. The window exploded inward in a shower of glass and splintered wood. Atlas barked furiously as Mark pulled Rachel down to the floor. A small cylindrical object clattered across the boards. Flashbang, Mark shouted. Close your eyes. The grenade detonated with a blinding flash and deafening bang. Even with his eyes shut and ears covered, Mark felt the concussive force. Disoriented, he struggled to his feet, reaching for his rifle. The door burst open, armored figures pouring in. Mark fired, dropping the first intruder, but there were too many. A second flashbang flew in, then a third. Through the chaos, Mark saw Lara dragging Elin toward the hidden back exit, Rachel helping them. Atlas launched himself at an attacker, powerful jaws locking onto an armored forearm. Something struck Mark from behind, hard, professional. He staggered, vision blurring. Another blow and he was on his knees. Secure the targets, a female voice commanded. Tranquilize the dog. Mark fought through the pain and disorientation, firing his sidearm blindly toward the voice. A bullet whined past his ear in response. Alive, not dead, the woman snapped. We need him for questioning. Something sharp pierced Mark's neck. Warmth spread through his veins, his limbs suddenly too heavy to move. The rifle slipped from his fingers. He tried to call out to Atlas, to the children, but his tongue wouldn't obey. As darkness claimed him, the last thing he saw was a familiar face framed by sleek dark hair, cold eyes studying him with clinical interest. Celesta Morn had found them. Mark regained consciousness slowly, awareness returning in fragments, cold metal against his back, restraints on his wrists and ankles, the antiseptic smell of a medical facility. He kept his eyes closed, assessing. No sounds of movement nearby, but the faint hum of electronic equipment. His body ached, particularly his head, but nothing seemed broken. The effects of whatever drug they had used were fading, leaving a metallic taste in his mouth. Cautiously, he opened his eyes. A sterile white room, medical equipment along one wall, a reinforced door with a small observation window. Classical interrogation setup, designed to disorient, to establish complete control. The door opened. Celesta Morn entered, followed by 2 armed guards. She was exactly as Lyra had described, not physically imposing, but radiating cold authority. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her face sharp-featured and intelligent. Mr. Grayson, she said, consulting a tablet. Former military engineer, Special Projects Division, distinguished service record, then a mental breakdown following the death of your family in the Eastern Seaboard bombardment. Interesting that you've resurfaced now, of all times. Mark remained silent, studying her. Your resistance is unnecessary, she continued. We're not the enemy. We're scientists seeking to understand a potential threat to national security. Children are a threat? Mark's voice was hoarse. They're not children, Mr. Grayson. They're alien biological entities with unknown capabilities. The fact that they resemble human children is merely evolutionary convergence, or possibly deliberate mimicry designed to lower our defenses. Where are they? Mark asked. What have you done with them? They're safe, being examined by our specialists. She set the tablet down, leaning closer. What interests me more is you, Mr. Grayson. Why protect them? What did they offer you? Nothing. They needed help. Altruism? Celesta smiled thinly. From a man who abandoned human society entirely? I find that difficult to believe. Mark tested his restraints subtly. Solid, professional work. No give at all. Where's Atlas? He asked. The enhanced canine? Also being examined. Remarkable specimen. The genetic modifications are far more extensive than the records indicated. She tilted her head slightly. He fought quite impressively to protect the aliens. Injured 2 of my men before we could subdue him. Pride mingled with worry in Mark's chest. Atlas was alive at least. And Dr. Miller, he asked, was she working for you all along? Celesta's expression revealed nothing. Dr. Miller has her own motivations. Currently, she's enjoying our hospitality in another section of the facility. So Rachel had been captured too. Either she was telling the truth about opposing Celesta's operation, or this was an elaborate deception to maintain her cover. Mark couldn't be sure yet. What do you want from me? He asked directly. Information, primarily. What did the aliens tell you about their species, their technology, their intentions toward Earth? Nothing. They're children, scared and trying to survive. Celesta sighed, a theatrical display of disappointment. Mr. Grayson, please. We recovered communications equipment from your cabin, not human technology. They clearly trusted you with more than sob stories. Mark kept his face neutral. The Nixon communication device, they must have found it during their search. It was just a beacon to signal their people if they found their mother. Their mother? Celesta's eyes sharpened with interest. The female we're holding? The one with the elaborate markings? Mark cursed inwardly. He'd revealed too much. I don't know. They just said their mother was taken by your people. Fascinating. Celesta made a note on her tablet. That would explain the female's unusual resistance to our examinations. Maternal protective instincts, perhaps. Rage boiled in Mark's chest. Examinations? Is that what you call torture now? Strong words, Mr. Grayson. We're conducting scientific research on a non-human species. Ethics designed for human subjects don't apply. They feel pain. They have families, culture, language. That's enough to deserve ethical treatment. Celesta studied him with clinical detachment. Your military file mentioned your ethical objections to certain research protocols. It seems those tendencies have only grown stronger. She straightened. Rest assured the specimens are valuable to us. We have no interest in damaging them unnecessarily. They're not specimens, Mark said through clenched teeth. They're refugees. Their ship was a diplomatic mission. Is that what they told you? Celesta's smile didn't reach her eyes. How convenient, a claim impossible to verify. What about the technology you've recovered? The ship's records? Surely that proves their vessel was extensively damaged in the crash. Much of their technology was destroyed or is currently inoperable. She moved toward the door. But we're making progress. With the right incentives, the specimens have begun to cooperate. The implication was clear. They were using the children to coerce the adults, or vice versa. Mark strained against his restraints, earning only the bite of metal against his wrists. You'll pay for this, he promised quietly. When their people come looking for them. If any rescue attempt is made, Celesta interrupted, we're fully prepared to respond. In fact, we're counting on it. Additional specimens, more advanced technology, it would accelerate our research significantly. She paused at the door. Think carefully about your position, Mr. Grayson. Cooperation could earn you leniency, perhaps even a role in the research program. Your engineering background would be valuable. Her gaze hardened. Continued resistance will only make things more difficult for you, and for the specimens you seem to care about. With that, she left, the guards following. The door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, leaving Mark alone with his rage and the growing certainty that Celesta Morn represented a threat not just to the Nixon refugees, but potentially to peaceful relations between two civilizations. Hours passed. Mark worked systematically at his restraints, achieving nothing but raw wrists. He examined every inch of the room he could see from his position, searching for weaknesses, opportunities. The observation window darkened occasionally, someone watching him, assessing his behavior. When the door finally opened again, he was surprised to see not Celesta, but a man in a lab coat, middle-aged, balding, with nervous hands and guilty eyes. Mr. Grayson, sure, the man said quietly, glancing back at the door. My name is Dr. Parker. I don't have much time. You're with Rachel's group, Mark guessed. Parker nodded, moving to check Mark's vital signs, a pretense to speak privately. The extraction plan is proceeding. Tonight, 0200 hours. We've disabled the primary security grid, but the backup will activate within 3 minutes of any alarm. The children, Atlas? Sublevel C research wing. The dog is in the high security containment area. They're having trouble keeping him sedated. Parker loosened Mark's restraints slightly. Not enough to free him, but enough to improve circulation. The adult aliens are in the primary research lab, heavily guarded. And Rachel? Interrogation block. They're suspicious of her, but haven't confirmed her involvement with us yet. Parker pressed something small and hard into Mark's palm. Magnetic key. It will open your restraints and most interior doors. Wait for the signal, power fluctuation, then emergency lighting only. How many guards? 32 on night rotation, heavily armed. Parker stepped back as footsteps approached in the corridor. We'll get only one chance at this. The door opened, revealing a security guard. Time's up, Doctor. Parker nodded, gathering his equipment. To the guard, he said, patient is stable but dehydrated. I've ordered IV fluids. After they left, Mark carefully concealed the magnetic key beneath his body, mind racing with possibilities and contingencies. If Parker was legitimate, the coming hours would determine not just his fate, but potentially the future of human-Nixon relations. If it was a trap, well, he'd deal with that possibility when the time came. Mark closed his eyes, conserving strength, reviewing the layout of the facility based on Parker's brief information. Sublevel C for the children. High security containment for Atlas. Primary research lab for the adult Nixons. Interrogation block for Rachel. 4 targets spread throughout the facility. A coordinated extraction would be challenging under the best circumstances. With limited personnel and a 3-minute window before backup security engaged, it seemed nearly impossible. But Mark had faced impossible odds before. The bombing that had taken his family had also taught him something vital, that even in the darkest moments, action was preferable to surrender. Fighting, however hopeless, was better than passive acceptance. He would be ready when the signal came. The facility lights flickered precisely at 2 o'clock hours. A moment later, they went out completely, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency lighting. Mark didn't hesitate. He retrieved the magnetic key and pressed it against his restraints. The locks disengaged with a soft click. He moved quickly, checking the door. Unlocked, as Parker had promised. The corridor beyond was empty, the guard station at the far end abandoned as personnel responded to the power failure. Mark oriented himself based on the emergency exit signs. If Parker's information was correct, the children would be 2 levels down. Atlas was on this level, but in the opposite wing. The adult Nixons and Rachel were both on the level below. Strategic thinking dictated that he should secure Atlas first. The dog's enhanced senses and combat capabilities would be invaluable for the rest of the rescue. But Mark's heart pulled him toward the children. If Celesta decided to use them as leverage or hostages, all might be lost. A distant alarm began to sound. The extraction team making their move elsewhere in the facility. Mark made his decision. The children first, then Atlas, then the adults and Rachel. He headed for the stairwell, moving as silently as his military training allowed. Sublevel C was in chaos, scientists and security personnel rushing to secure research materials, others heading for designated safe rooms. In the confusion, Mark slipped past them, following signs for the pediatric research wing. He found it locked down, a guard stationed outside. The man was young, nervous, his weapon held too tightly. Mark approached from behind, using the rhythmic emergency lighting to time his movements. One moment in shadow, the next striking precisely at the pressure points his combat instructors had drilled into him years ago. The guard collapsed without a sound. Mark caught him, taking his weapon and access card before dragging him into a supply closet. The access card worked on the pediatric wing doors. Inside, Mark found a scene that ignited fury in his chest. The alien children, including Lyra and Elin, confined in transparent cells like laboratory specimens. Medical equipment surrounded each enclosure, monitoring every aspect of their biology. Lyra saw him first, her silver eyes widening in recognition. She pressed her hands against the transparent barrier, mouth forming his name though no sound penetrated the enclosure. Mark located the control panel and swiped the access card. Red lights turned green. The barriers began to retract, alarms immediately blaring throughout the section. Quickly, he told the children as they emerged. Stay together. Follow me. There were 6 in total, Lyra and Elin, plus 4 others of varying ages, Orishas, all with the same blue skin and silver eyes. They gathered around him with the discipline of those accustomed to crisis. My mother, Lyra said urgently. We must find her. We will, Mark promised. But first, we need Atlas. He led them back toward the stairwell, the children moving with surprising speed and silence. The facility's confusion worked in their favor, security protocols breaking down as personnel responded to multiple simultaneous crises. The high-security containment area proved more challenging. 2 guards remained at their posts despite the chaos, professional enough to maintain their duty. Mark hesitated, unwilling to engage in a firefight with the children present. An explosion rocked the facility, distant but powerful enough to shake the walls. The guards' radios crackled with urgent commands. After a brief exchange, one left to respond, leaving a single guard at the containment entrance. Before Mark could formulate a new plan, Lyra stepped forward. She made a series of musical tones, not speech, but something more primal. The remaining children joined in, creating a harmonic pattern that seemed to ripple through the air. The guard stiffened, his expression slackening. He stared blankly ahead, weapon lowered. What did you do? Mark whispered. Harmony disruption, Lyra explained quickly. It confuses human thought patterns. Temporary only. Mark didn't question further. He approached the guard, carefully removing his weapon and access card. The man didn't resist, his eyes unfocused, breathing shallow. He'll recover? Mark confirmed. Lyra nodded. Soon, we must hurry. The containment area housed various specimens, some recognizably terrestrial, others clearly not. Mark found Atlas in a reinforced enclosure at the far end. The dog was awake but groggy, a monitoring collar around his neck replacing his usual one, so... Atlas, Mark called softly. The dog's ears perked up, recognition lighting his intelligent eyes. He struggled to his feet as Mark opened the enclosure, immediately pressing against Mark's leg in greeting. Good boy, Mark murmured, removing the monitoring collar. Ready to work? Atlas shook himself vigorously, seeming to throw off the remaining effects of sedation. His eyes fixed on the alien children with clear protective intent. Find Rachel, Mark told him. Dr. Miller, remember her? The dog's ears twitched at the name. Mark retrieved a lab coat from a nearby hook, allowing Atlas to scent it. Similar to this, find her. Atlas processed the command, then moved toward the exit with purpose. Mark and the children followed, now heading for the level where both Rachel and the adult Nixons were held. The facility's state had deteriorated further, smoke from the explosion filling some corridors, sprinklers activated in others. Security teams rushed past, focused on containing whatever breach had occurred on the opposite side of the complex. Atlas led them unerringly through the chaos, tracking scents only he could detect. They encountered resistance only once, a security team that spotted them in a junction. Mark pushed the children behind him, raising his appropriated weapon. Before either side could fire, another explosion rocked the facility. Closer this time. The ceiling collapsed between them, cutting off the security team and clearing their path forward. Parker's people are creating diversions, Mark realized, giving us a clear route. They reached the interrogation block to find it already breached. Bodies lay in the corridor, security personnel, dispatched with professional efficiency. Rachel stood amid them, armed with a guard's weapon, hair wild, a cut bleeding on her forehead. Mark, she exclaimed, you made it. We need to move. The primary research lab is under heavy guard. Our team is pinned down there. Atlas bounded to her side, confirming her identity beyond doubt. She knelt briefly to acknowledge him, then led them through a series of service corridors, avoiding the main confrontation points. The extraction team entered from the north, she explained as they moved. Created multiple diversions to thin out security, but Celesta's elite guards are concentrated around the adult aliens. They know that's our primary target. How many of your people are here? Mark asked. 12. Former special forces, mostly, plus 3 of us inside. She glanced at the alien children. Are they all accounted for? Lyra nodded. All the young ones, but the adults, my mother? We're going to get them now, Rachel assured her. They emerged into a corridor adjacent to the primary research lab. The sounds of gunfire echoed from around the corner, brief professional exchanges rather than panicked spraying. Rachel gestured for them to wait, then peered carefully around the edge. 4 of our team are pinned down at the main entrance. Celeste's guards have superior position and firepower. Mark considered their options. Is there another way in? Ventilation system maybe, but it would be too small for adults. Lyra stepped forward. We could go, the young ones, through your air passages. Absolutely not, Mark said immediately. Too dangerous. Our people are in there, Lyra insisted, her silver eyes fierce. Our mother. We can move through spaces your kind cannot. Silent, undetected. What would you do once inside? Rachel asked. Free our people. They are restrained but not unconscious. Together we have abilities your guards cannot counter. Mark remembered the harmony disruption that had incapacitated the guard earlier. It's too risky, Lyra. If anything happened to you, if we do nothing, we all fail, she countered with startling maturity. The facility's emergency protocols will reset soon. The opportunity will be lost. Rachel checked her watch. She's right, we have less than 4 minutes before backup systems engage. Full lockdown. Mark looked at the alien children, seeing not just vulnerability, but determination and capabilities he didn't fully understand. Making the decision went against every protective instinct, but the tactical logic was sound. If you go, he said to Lyra, I need your word that you'll retreat at the first sign of serious danger. No heroics. We are not heroes, Lyra replied solemnly. We are survivors. Rachel led them to a maintenance access point where the ventilation system could be entered. The opening was indeed too small for an adult human, but adequate for the slender alien children. The primary research lab is straight down this main shaft, then left at the 3rd junction, she explained, showing Lyra a simplified facility map. Once you're inside, you'll need to disable the restraint systems. The controls should be on the central console. Lyra nodded, then turned to her sister and the other children. They communicated briefly in their musical language, organizing themselves with impressive efficiency. 3 minutes to enter, free our people, and unlock the main doors, Lyra confirmed. We will succeed. Before entering the vent, she grasped Mark's hand briefly. If we fail, tell our people what happened here. Tell them not all humans are like the woman who pretends. Then they were gone, slipping into the darkness of the ventilation system with barely a sound. Mark, Rachel, and Atlas took position near the lab's secondary entrance, ready to move when, if, the doors unlocked. The gunfire around the corner continued sporadically, keeping Celeste's guards occupied. Your people, Mark said quietly to Rachel. They knew the risks? She nodded. Everyone volunteered. Most have family members who were taken during previous contact events. This isn't the first time Celeste's group has captured extraterrestrial visitors. How long has this been happening? Decades at least. Most incidents are successfully covered up. But this crash, it was too large, too public. They couldn't contain all the evidence or all the survivors. She checked her weapon. It forced everything into the open, at least for those of us watching carefully. 2 minutes passed with excruciating slowness. Then a new alarm sounded, different from the others, more urgent. Containment breach in the primary lab, Rachel translated. They did it. The door beside them clicked, security lights changing from red to green. Mark didn't hesitate. He pushed through, Atlas at his heels, weapon ready. The scene inside was chaotic, but not in the way he had expected. No gunfire, no physical confrontation. Instead, Celeste's guards stood frozen in place, weapons lowered, expressions vacant, just like the guard outside Atlas's containment area. Some were slumped unconscious on the floor. The adult Nixons, 7 of them, stood in a circle free of their restraints. Their hands were raised, fingers splayed, heads tilted back. From their throats came the same harmonic tones the children had produced, but magnified, layered, overwhelming. In the center of the circle stood Celeste Morn, her face contorted in a silent scream, hands pressed against her ears. Mark spotted Lyra and the other children emerging from a ventilation grate, rushing to join the adults. One female, taller than the others, with elaborate markings covering her blue skin, embraced Lyra and Elin with visible relief. Aeneas, Mark guessed. The children's mother. The harmonics reached a crescendo, then stopped abruptly. The sudden silence felt physical, like a pressure wave passing through the room. Celesta collapsed to her knees, blood trickling from her nose and ears. The Nixon adults turned toward Mark and Rachel, their silver eyes assessing. "You helped our young," one said, male, with authority evident in his bearing. "Why be?" "Because it was right," Mark answered simply. The Nixons studied him, then nodded once, a gesture that somehow conveyed both acknowledgement and respect. "We must leave," Rachel urged. "The backup systems." As if on cue, alarms began to sound. Metal shutters began descending over the doors and windows. "This way," Rachel shouted, leading them toward the main entrance where her team had been engaged. They found the area secure, Celesta's guards neutralized, the extraction team waiting with expressions of amazement at the sight of the freed aliens. "Primary exit compromised," one of the team reported, heavy reinforcements approaching from the south wing. "Secondary extraction route," Rachel ordered, "through the vehicle bay." They moved as a unified group now, humans and Nixons together, the adults protecting the children, Mark's appropriated weapon, and Atlas's enhanced senses securing their flanks. The facility's remaining security forces seemed disorganized, perhaps affected by whatever harmonic attack the Nixons had deployed in the lab. The vehicle bay contained several military-style transport trucks. Rachel's team moved efficiently to secure two of them, hot wiring the ignitions while others provided cover. "We'll split up," Rachel decided. Two vehicles, different routes to the rendezvous point. As they prepared to board, Aeneas approached Mark. "You protected my daughters when I could not," she said, her English accented but clear. "Our people will remember this." "Just get them somewhere safe," Mark replied, "away from Celesta and her kind." "We will. Our ships survived the crash better than the humans believe. Repairs are nearly complete." She hesitated. "You could come with us, you and your companion." She gestured to Atlas. "Our world would welcome you." Before Mark could respond, gunfire erupted from the bay entrance, a final desperate assault by Celesta's remaining forces. Everyone scrambled for cover, bullets ricocheting off metal and concrete. "Go," Mark shouted to the Nixons. "Get the children out." Aeneas hesitated, then directed her people toward the waiting vehicles. Mark, Rachel, and several team members provided covering fire, buying time for the aliens to board. Mark was preparing to fall back when he saw her, Celesta Morn, standing in a doorway across the vehicle bay, blood still streaking her face. In her hand was not a gun, but a small device with a blinking red light. "Dead man's switch," Rachel realized with horror. "She's wired the facility to blow." Mark didn't think, he acted. Shoving Rachel toward the nearest truck, he sprinted across the open space, directly into the line of fire. Atlas matched his pace, the dog's enhanced muscles propelling him in powerful bounds. A bullet grazed Mark's arm. Another tore through his side. He barely felt them. Focus narrowed to Celesta and the device in her hand. She saw him coming, her eyes widening in surprise, then determination. Her thumb shifted, preparing to release the switch. Atlas reached her first, a gray-white missile launching at her arm. His jaws closed around her wrist just as Mark tackled her bodily. They went down in a tangle of limbs, the device clattering across the floor, but the switch, crucially, still depressed. "It's over, Celesta," Mark gasped, blood soaking his shirt. "Let them go." "Never," she hissed. "They're too valuable. Their technology, their biology, it could advance us by centuries." "At what cost? Starting a war? Becoming monsters?" Her eyes burned with fanatic intensity. "For humanity's future, any cost is acceptable." Movement caught Mark's attention. Rachel, approaching cautiously, weapon trained on Celesta. "The device," Mark warned. "Dead man's switch. If she releases it..." Rachel nodded understanding. She knelt carefully, examining the fallen detonator without touching it. "Remote trigger, military grade," she assessed, connected to charges throughout the facility. No way to disarm it without the code. Celesta smiled coldly despite Atlas's growl, the dog's teeth still poised inches from her throat. "Precisely. So here's what happens now. You let me go, take the device with me, and allow me to leave. Once I'm clear, I'll deactivate it remotely." And if we refuse, Mark asked, then I release the switch and none of us leaves this facility alive. Her gaze shifted to the trucks where the Nixons waited. Including your blue-skinned friends. Mark met Rachel's eyes, seeing his own calculation reflected there. Celesta was cornered but still dangerous, the most volatile combination possible. Before either could respond, a high musical tone filled the air. Mark looked toward the source. Aeneas, standing at the truck's open door, her six-fingered hands raised in a complex gesture. The tone modulated, becoming a pattern that seemed to pierce directly into Mark's mind. He winced, fighting a sudden wave of disorientation. Celesta reacted more severely, her body going rigid, eyes unfocused. "What are you?" she gasped. "Neural disruption," Aeneas explained calmly, "more precise than the harmony technique. It affects only the target." Rachel moved quickly, wrapping Celesta's finger around the switch with her own, maintaining pressure as she carefully took control of the device. "Got it," she confirmed, "but we still can't disarm it." "We can," Aeneas said. "Our technology interfaces with yours more easily than you might imagine. But we must hurry." Two adult Nixons emerged from the truck, approaching cautiously. One took the device from Rachel, examining it with silver eyes that seemed to perceive more than visible light. "Simple electromagnetic pulse trigger," the alien assessed. "Primitive but effective." While they worked to disarm the device, Mark sagged against a vehicle, the adrenaline fading and pain replacing it. Atlas pressed against his leg, whining softly in concern. "You're injured," Rachel observed, moving to examine his wounds. "I'll live," Mark grunted. "Just get everyone out of here before reinforcements arrive." The Nixon technicians completed their work, the device's red light fading to black. "Disarmed," one confirmed. "The explosives are inert." Celesta remained conscious but immobilized, her eyes burning with hatred as she watched her plans unravel. Two of Rachel's teams secured her with zip ties. "She'll face justice," Rachel promised. "We have enough evidence of human rights violations to ensure she never operates with authority again." "What about the other survivors?" Mark asked. "From previous contacts?" "We'll find them," Rachel assured him. "This was just the beginning. With the Nixons' help, we'll dismantle Celesta's entire operation." Aeneas approached, her silver eyes focused on Mark's injuries. "You are bleeding heavily. Our healers can help." Mark nodded gratefully, allowing himself to be supported toward the waiting trucks. Atlas followed closely, unwilling to leave his side. As they prepared to depart, Lyra appeared at the truck's door, her young face solemn. "Are you coming with us?" she asked Mark. He looked at the alien child who had shown such courage, then at Atlas, then finally at Rachel, representing the human resistance against exploitation and cruelty. "I need to stay," he said gently. "Help Rachel's people find the others, like you, who've been taken. Make sure what happened here never happens again." Lyra's silver eyes dimmed with disappointment. "But you will visit when the bridge between worlds is established?" "I promise," Mark said, and meant it. Aeneas placed a six-fingered hand on her daughter's shoulder. "He is Shukren now, guardian of the bloodline. He has earned the right to move between our worlds when he chooses." She pressed something into Mark's palm, a small disc with swirling patterns that matched the markings on her skin. "The sign of the Keeper," she explained. "It will identify you to any Nixon you encounter. When you are ready, it will guide you to us." The facility's external alarms began to sound, reinforcements approaching. Rachel urged everyone into the vehicles, preparing for their escape. As the trucks roared to life, Lyra leaned out one last time. "We were not bad," she said suddenly. "Mother did not leave us. The ship was damaged. We were separated in the crash." Mark nodded, understanding. "I know, it wasn't your fault." "And we found you," she continued, a smile brightening her blue features. "The man with the toe who did not leave us in trouble." Atlas barked once, as if acknowledging his role in the story. Mark rested his hand on the dog's head, feeling a connection to something larger than himself, a bridge between worlds that had begun with a simple act of compassion in a snowy forest. The trucks departed, speeding away from the facility that had nearly become a flashpoint for interspecies conflict. Mark watched them go, the sign of the Keeper warm in his palm, Atlas solid at his side. The battle was won, but the larger struggle was just beginning, to build understanding between two civilizations, to protect the vulnerable on both sides, to ensure that humanity's first official contact with an alien species would be marked by cooperation rather than exploitation. It was a worthy mission for a man who had once sought only isolation, who had retreated from human connection after devastating loss. Now Mark Grayson stood at the threshold of a new chapter, not just in his life but in human history, and he would not face it alone.